Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Gentlemen, are you ready? If you're not used to this channel, if you're not used to traveling back 200 years back in time, get ready. If you don't want to do that, there's the door. See you later. Hey, if you're not subscribed, love to have you pull up a chair, learn about history through YouTube recommendations. Right now, we're going back in time. The third episode of Napoleon's Marshals. Original video at the top of the description below. Suchet, my boy. Has not been mentioned. All right, let's do it. All right, all right. Original video at the top of the description below if I didn't say that. If you want to watch the first two videos of the first two Marshal videos, I would recommend it, but that's up to you. Let's do it.
Terror belli, decus pacis. Terror in war, ornament in peace. The words inscribed on every French marshal's baton. In France, the title of Marshal or Maréchal goes back at least to the 13th century. It represents the highest possible position of military authority, authority symbolized by a marshal's baton. The title was abolished during the French Revolution as incompatible with the egalitarian spirit of the age. But in 1804, Napoleon founded a new empire and restored the ancient rank. This is Epic History TV's guide to Napoleon's Marshals. All 26 have been ranked according to our own evaluation of their achievements as marshals, with expert guidance from Lieutenant Colonel Remy Porte, former chief historian of the French Army. So far, we've met Marshals Perignon, Brune, Serrurier, Kellerman, Grouchy, Moncey, Poniatowski, Jourdan, Bernadotte, Augereau, Lefebvre, Mortier.
My favorite so far, Lefebvre. Number 16 right here, my favorite so far. Just seems like a soldier's soldier.
First, a big...
I wish I had... Hey, make your money, man.
About the pink is arguing that 13. Marshal Saint-Cyr.
I mean, Napoleon's saying, I think anyone getting that statement coming from Napoleon would not be insulted. And a very big, very positive thing to have Napoleon call you the best man among us in terms of defense. I'm eager to learn.
Gouvion Saint-Cyr.
All right, I'm still waking up. Give me a break.
Was a gifted student who ran away from a miserable childhood to become an artist. A passionate Republican, he embraced the French Revolution and later volunteered for military service. Though proud and aloof by nature, his Republican politics and sharp intellect ensured he was elected captain of his company. His skill at drawing enemy positions then got him noticed by General Custine, who gave him a job on his staff.
Check that out. Best beard award and hair.
During these turbulent early years of the revolution, Custine was one of several generals who was punished for defeat with a trip to the guillotine. Saint-Cyr's instinctive grasp of warfare, brilliant planning and tactics won him promotion from volunteer to general of division in 2 years. An even more remarkable achievement, as he'd had no formal military training.
I'd like to see a full list of the ranks in Napoleonic army.
But his cold, analytical
armies
approach
of the time
meant that he was always a respected leader, rather than loved. After 5 years' service with the Army of the Rhine, he was sent to Italy.
I'd rather be respected than loved, I guess.
Novi, he commanded the French right wing, but skillfully extricated his troops from the debacle. The next year he was back on the Rhine and won a brilliant victory over the Austrians at Bibrach. but a bitter dispute with his commander, General Moreau, encouraged rumors that Saint-Cyr was impossible to work with. Saint-Cyr believed soldiers should not meddle in politics and did not support Napoleon's seizure of power in 1799. Nor did he show much enthusiasm for Napoleon's decision to crown himself emperor 5 years later. His political views cost him dearly. Saint-Cyr was sidelined for several years, while less able generals were made marshals. In 1805, he commanded French forces in central Italy. But when he was made subordinate to Marshal Massena, a man whom he personally detested, he returned to Paris, even when Napoleon threatened to have him shot for desertion. In 1808, Saint-Cyr was given command of a corps for the invasion of Spain, but his failure to take Girona meant he was relieved of command. Leaving in a fury before his replacement, Marshal Augereau, had arrived, he was nearly court-martialed again for desertion. Saint-Cyr's military talent, however, was not in doubt. In 1812, he was recalled for the Russia campaign, with command of 6th Bavarian.
I just want to say one thing, clarify. I bring up Suchet a lot. Let's be clear. I don't know a lot about all of these guys, clearly. The reason I just kind of stuck to Suchet kind of in my mind and why I liked him is because in that episode, one of the episodes about Napoleonic war fronts in Spain, he was in charge of one of the northeastern areas, cities in Spain, close to the Mediterranean, and he seemed to be very respectful in terms of the people around him, whether that just be his nature or because he thought it was a smart decision to make it less likely for Spanish civilians to rise up against you. But that's why I bring him up a lot and why I respect him and like him. Of course, I don't know everything about these guys, so I could be misled.
His role was to support Marshal Oudinot in guarding the northern flank of the French salient. When Wittgenstein's Russians attacked at Polotsk, Oudinot was wounded and Saint-Cyr took over command, turning probable defeat into a brilliant victory. For this achievement, Napoleon awarded Saint-Cyr his Marshal's baton. But 2 months later, at a second Battle of Polotsk, Saint-Cyr was attacked by a larger Russian army, seriously wounded in the foot and forced to pull back. His injury meant he missed the worst horrors of the Russian retreat, but he contracted typhus early in 1813.
That was a brutal episode.
And was sick for many months. Saint-Cyr returned to the Grande Armée in August, taking command of 14th Corps and the defense of Dresden. Incredibly, this was the first and only time that he worked directly alongside the Emperor, and both soon learned new respect for each other's abilities. Saint-Cyr's skilled defense of Dresden set the stage for Napoleon's great victory there later that month. But Saint-Cyr was incredulous when Napoleon later ordered him to remain in Dresden, while other forces concentrated for the decisive Battle of Leipzig, 60 miles to the west. Napoleon's defeat at Leipzig meant that Saint-Cyr and other garrisons in the east were cut off and had to surrender that autumn. Saint-Cyr took...
Now, imagine being those guys who are, communication isn't great, who are surrounded on all sides but didn't really even know it, are in like the Poland, Lithuania territory when Napoleon lost Leipzig. That'd be awful.
In the 100 Days, determined to keep out of France's political disputes. Under the restored monarchy, he served as Minister of War and tried but failed to save Marshal Ney from the death penalty. He also struggled to enact military reforms in the face of royalist opposition, eventually resigning in disgust and retiring to his country estate. Marshal Saint-Cyr remains one of the great what-ifs of the Napoleonic Wars, an extremely able commander sidelined for his politics, who might well have proved one of Napoleon's very best marshals.
Interesting. Oudinot.
12. Marshal Oudinot.
That's awful.
Nicolas
Decent, but not very bright.
Oudinot ran away to join the army aged 17. But his father dragged him home 3 years later to help run the family business.
Died at 80. All these guys, or a lot of them, die very old.
Guard and was promoted to major. In the wars that followed, he served with the Army of the Rhine, always in the thick of the fighting, rapidly promoted and frequently wounded, a habit for which he became celebrated. In 1799, he was promoted to General of Division and sent to Switzerland to serve as General Massena's new Chief of Staff, a role he performed to perfection. Serving with General Bagoun in Italy, performed to perfection. Serving with General Bagoun in Italy, he led a cavalry charge against an Austrian battery at the Battle of Monzembano, sabering gunners and capturing one cannon himself, a feat for which Napoleon awarded him a Sword of Honor. In 1805, the newly crowned Emperor Napoleon gave Oudinot command of an elite grenadier division formed from the tallest, strongest soldiers in the army. In December that year, at the Battle of Austerlitz, Oudinot insisted on leading the...
I just want to see what is the definition of grenadier? Interesting. So throwing grenades in assault operations. So they were mainly used, I would say, like, well, wait, why would you want the strongest and largest soldiers for that kind of, sort of seems like a sneaky tactic, but it just seems like you're getting the strongest soldiers and most probably athletic and tall in order to, you know, throwing of grenades and just close hand-to-hand combat. So every time I see just say something that I just want a clear definition, I want to make sure I learn about it.
The division in person, despite having been shot in the thigh 2 weeks earlier. His grenadiers were kept in reserve for most of the battle, but saw heavy fighting in the latter stages, as Napoleon completed the destruction of the Allied left wing. At the Siege of Danzig in 1807, General Oudinot's division had the unusual distinction of capturing an enemy warship, a British sloop that had run aground trying to resupply the city. A month later, at Friedland, Oudinot and his grenadiers were under Marshal Lannes' command and played a crucial role holding up the Russian army.
This is a very early on episode.
Until Napoleon arrived to deal a decisive blow. During the 1809 war with Austria, Oudinot was wounded once more at the Battle of Aspern.
Sorry, it's so cool to see like the Friedland in this kind of battle map and thinking back how many videos ago this was and how much I've learned in the meantime is very gratifying.
Austria, Oudinot was wounded once more at the Battle of Aspern. When Marshal Lannes died of his wounds, Napoleon chose Oudinot to succeed him as commander of 2nd Corps. He led his new corps with such success at Wagram 6 weeks later that Napoleon attributed victory to Massena and Oudinot. A week later, he became one of 3 new marshals, one for France, one for the army, one for friendship. Oudinot, the army's choice, fearless and much loved, a man whose courage inspired all around him.
Deja vu, wasn't that in the last episode?
He later received an additional reward, the title Duke of Reggio. In 1812, Marshal Oudinot led 2nd Corps into Russia, but was wounded again at Polotsk.
Probably was in the last episode because it was talking about one of those other 3 marshals.
And handed over command to General Saint-Cyr. 10 weeks later, he was back with his corps, marching south to join up with Napoleon's army on its retreat from Moscow. Oudinot's men were shocked when they saw their old comrades from the main column. They looked more like fugitives than soldiers of the Grande Armée. Since Oudinot's 2nd Corps was in better shape than most, it formed the vanguard for the desperate crossing of the Berezina River. But the next day, in bitter fighting to hold the bridgehead against the Russians, Oudinot was shot from his saddle. He was carried back to a cottage with a serious gunshot wound, but then he and his party became surrounded by Cossacks.
He lived to 80.
Asked for his pistols, and from his bed, aiming through an opening opposite, began firing at the Cossacks.
Wow.
They were rescued by friendly troops just in time. Oudinot was back with the Grande Armée in Germany in 1813.
I love how all these guys seem to look at battle. It's just like, it's almost like a duty to die.
In August, Napoleon...
And I love that quote, like a soldier who lived over the age of 30 is a coward, or something like that, some kind of paraphrase.
Napoleon ordered him to lead an advance on Berlin.
I'm going to paraphrase that wrong, but I remember that in an earlier episode. That was a cool quote.
But he was defeated by Bernadotte.
Really gives you sorry, I'm pausing so much, an insight into, the army, a soldier and a general's mind.
Army of the North at Grossbeeren. He then retreated in the wrong direction, causing Napoleon to remark, "It's truly difficult to have less brains than the Duke of Reggio." In Oudinot's defense, he'd probably been given an impossible task. Insufficient men to take on a strong opponent, bad weather, terrible roads, and he himself unwell, possibly not yet recovered from his ordeal in Russia. Napoleon put Oudinot back where he was most effective, leading troops in combat under his close supervision. At Leipzig, he commanded 2 divisions of the Young Guard, engaged in heavy fighting on the southern front for 2 days. Oudinot continued to serve the Emperor courageously and loyally as a corps commander in the final campaign of 1814. But in April, he was one of several marshals to confront Napoleon with the reality of his position and force his abdication. When Napoleon returned from exile in 1815, Oudinot refused to break his new oath to the monarchy, but declared neutrality, telling Napoleon, "Since I shall not serve you, sire, I shall serve no one." He continued to hold senior commands under the Bourbons. By one estimate, Oudinot was wounded 36 times in his military career, more than any other marshal. Here are just 20 that we found details for. A fellow officer who bathed with him at a spa after the war saw the scars on his body and observed he was little more than a colander. A officer who bathed with him at a spa after the war.
Gunshot wound. Around it said location of these wounds not specified, so obviously not perfectly accurate, but around the head area, gunshot, saber cut around the neck or chin area, grape shot wound. Jeez. Were they all at different battles? Well, no, there's gunshot, broken leg.
Saw the scars on his body
a colander.
And observed he was little more than a colander. Ironically, Oudinot was also one of the longest-lived marshals, dying aged 80 while serving as governor of Les Invalides.
Classic, wow. Hey guys, all right, we're back. I had to do some stuff, so a little bit later in the day, but continuing where we left off, let's do it.
Marshal Victor. Claude Victor Perrin was an experienced soldier by the time of the French Revolution, a sergeant with 8 years' service in the Grenoble artillery regiment. The Revolutionary Wars brought the opportunity for rapid promotion, and by 1793, he was commanding an infantry battalion at the siege of Toulon. He led a daring night assault on rapid promotion, and by 1793, he was commanding an infantry battalion at the siege of Toulon. He led a daring night assault on British defences alongside the army's artillery chief, a young Major Bonaparte. Both men were wounded, but the attack was a success, and both were quickly promoted to Brigadier General. Victor served under General Bonaparte in Italy and turned out to be a brilliant brigade commander. In 1800, and he distinguished himself at the Battle of Marengo, where his command of the left wing won particular praise from Napoleon. But Victor did not hide his disapproval of Napoleon's quest for political power, and as a result, received relatively minor roles under the new regime. In 1802, he was earmarked to lead an expedition to recover the French territory of Louisiana. But it was called off when Napoleon decided instead to sell Louisiana to the United States.
We'll take it.
And Russia
will take Alaska.
From their days serving together in Italy. In 1806, Lannes persuaded Napoleon to let him have Victor as his new chief of staff for 5th Corps. Napoleon agreed to
That might be my favorite, one of my favorite paintings right here of the entire series. Just of this guy like, oh, he's there. Napoleon coming by.
As his new chief of staff for 5th Corps. Napoleon agreed, and in October...
And I'm saying that because like these guys are trying to keep composure, and this guy just couldn't let it, couldn't keep it in.
Chief of staff for 5th Corps. Napoleon agreed, and in October, Victor served as Lannes' deputy at the Battle of Jena. Napoleon's earlier misgivings about Victor were now forgotten, and that winter he was given command of the newly formed 10th Corps. But within weeks, he was captured by a Prussian patrol and had to be exchanged for a captured Prussian officer, General von Blücher. His big break came in 1807, stepping in for the wounded Marshal Bernadotte to command 1st Corps at Friedland, where he successfully led a major attack as the Emperor looked on. Promotion to Marshal and the title Duke of Bellumo swiftly followed. In 1808, Marshal Victor and 1st Corps took part in the invasion of Spain, where he'd be posted for the next 3 years. Victor's record in Spain was better than most, but like others, he seemed more interested in personal glory and rewards than in cooperating with fellow commanders. In 1809, at Medellin, he inflicted a crushing defeat on General Cuesta's Spanish army. 4 months later, his bold night attack on the British at Talavera came tantalizingly close to success. He was furious the next day when King Joseph and Marshal Jourdan refused to support fresh attacks and instead ordered a cautious withdrawal. The next year, Victor besieged the Spanish port of Cadiz. It proved a lengthy, futile operation, devoid of glory, and saw his troops defeated by an Allied sortie at the Battle of Barossa. In 1812, Victor was recalled from Spain for the invasion of Russia. His 9th Corps was held in reserve for most of the campaign, though his troops were kept busy defending depots and convoys from Cossack raids. That autumn, his corps attempted to cover the main army's retreat from Moscow. The greatest crisis of the retreat.
If you guys had to be in one of these terrible positions, would you rather be, I guess maybe the more I think about it, more I guess I'd pick Spain, but would you rather be a soldier in Napoleon's army fighting in Russia during the, the bad time in the retreat, or fighting in Russia or fighting in Spain? Because I remember in the Spain video, one of them, like the guerrillas, if they caught you and you were a French soldier, they would like torture you before they kill you.
Each came at the Berezina River. As the remnants of the Grande Armée began crossing over 2 improvised bridges.
But I think I'd still take being in Spain than Russia, just because Russia is more of a better chance you're going to suffer.
Victor's 9th Corps was ordered to form the rear guard. Though heavily outnumbered, Victor skillfully handled his French and German troops, holding the Russians at bay as the army made its escape. He then marched his surviving troops over the bridges in good order. A courageous performance in desperate circumstances. In Germany in 1813, Victor commanded 2nd Corps, and led the attack in Napoleon's last great victory at Dresden. His corps was in heavy fighting again at Leipzig 2 months later.
Leipzig was crazy.
Victor continued to serve at the Emperor's side in the defense of France in 1814. By now, like many comrades, he must have been close to physical and psychological exhaustion. Regardless, during the Battle of Montereau, Napoleon let fly at him for failing to get his troops into position and blamed him for the Allies' escape. Victor was relieved of command, but angry and humiliated at what he considered his unfair dismissal, he told the Emperor, "Marshal Victor has not forgotten his old trade. I will shoulder a musket and take my place in the guard." Moved by this response, Napoleon relented and gave Victor command of a corps of young guard. 2 weeks later, he was badly wounded at the Battle of Craon and took no further part in the war. A month later, Napoleon abdicated, and Victor switched his loyalty to the Bourbon monarchy with surprising zeal. He led an investigation into former comrades who'd supported Napoleon during the 100 Days and was one of only 2 active marshals.
Is it like the higher your collar on your shirt, like the more prestigious you are?
To vote for the death penalty for Marshal Ney, a decision he later claimed to regret. Victor later served as Minister of War, but retired from public life in 1830, following the overthrow of the Bourbon monarchy.
Incoming. All right.
Marshal Murat.
I mean, hey, I see that as a compliment.
Murat, the son of an innkeeper.
I cannot conceive how so brave a man could be so unreliable. He was only brave when facing the enemy. In council, he was a fool with no judgment. Pretty much saying, you know, you're an idiot at the command table. I don't want you like or your input on big decisions, big military moves. But when in face of the enemy, he's really brave. There's a slight hit there, but overall, I'd say that's a compliment.
Joachim Murat, the son of an innkeeper, was destined for a career in the church.
A lot of these
but
people
dropped out of college and joined a cavalry regiment instead.
Born to
his immense frustration, he saw
regular
action in the early years of
lower
the
class
Revolutionary Wars,
jobs,
being stuck with staff and training roles. But in 1795, while stationed in Paris with the 21st Chasseurs, fate intervened. A young general, Napoleon Bonaparte, had been put in charge of the defense of the National Convention. With a mob poised to storm the building, he ordered Captain Murat to bring him cannons, which he did, racing the guns through the city streets.
Like around the people who are going to
mow down the mob. With a famous whiff of grape shot. Napoleon was hailed as the savior of the government and rewarded with command of the army of Italy. Murat was promoted colonel and went with him as his new aide-de-camp. He soon made a name for himself as a bold and brilliant leader of cavalry, while his 6-foot height, curly locks, and love of women ensured fame as France's foremost beau sabreur. In 1798, Murat joined Napoleon's expedition to Egypt.
Yeah, I didn't see these. I gotta look at these.
His flanking charge broke the enemy, and Murat personally took the Ottoman commander prisoner.
Damn, look how good that is. That has to. Is that enhanced or something? Is that just a painting? Look how well done that is. That's like a photo.
Despite being shot in the jaw, a wound which, to his immense relief, did not ruin his looks. Back in Paris,
Pretty boy.
Napoleon launched his Coup d'etat to seize political power. When he got a hostile reception from the Council of 500, it was Murat who saved the day, leading troops in to clear the chamber, shouting, "Citizens, you have been dissolved," before adding something a bit more coarse. His place at the future emperor's side was further assured when he married Napoleon's youngest at the future emperor's side was further assured when he married Napoleon's youngest sister, Caroline, in 1800. Later that year, he commanded the French cavalry reserve at Marengo and helped Napoleon to win a decisive victory over the Austrians. When Napoleon established his empire in 1804, Murat became a marshal, second in seniority only to Berthier. He'd later also received the title Prince of the Empire and the rank of Grand Admiral. In the 1805 campaign, he commanded Napoleon's cavalry reserve, his excellent reconnaissance and diversions proving crucial in the encirclement of General Mack's Austrian army at Ulm. 3 weeks later, Murat and Marshal Lannes, who normally couldn't stand each other, together bluffed an Austrian commander into surrendering a vital bridge by persuading him that an armistice had been signed when it hadn't. It was a bold stunt, but overall Napoleon was not impressed by Murat's pursuit of the enemy.
You know, I hear a lot of like dedication of rules of war. Is that in the rules of war? Or, I mean, a good deception tactic is a good deception tactic.
I cannot approve your manner of march. You go on like a stunned fool, taking not the least notice of my orders.
What are you going to do about it?
Yet in battle, Murat remained a brilliant and inspiring leader, as demonstrated at Austerlitz, and the next year at Jena, where he led the decisive charge, wielding only his riding crop. The next year at Eylau, with the Russians poised to break through his center, Napoleon ordered Murat to lead a mass cavalry charge straight at the enemy. Murat's men succeeded and saved the army from disaster, though at a terrible price in men and horses.
I've seen that photo, I think, before in an earlier episode, but it just shocked me a little more seeing it this time.
Napoleon had rewarded Murat in 1806 by making him sovereign prince of the Grand Duchy of Berg. In 1808, he sent Murat to Spain to act as his representative. Spain was still a French ally, but in May, Napoleon's heavy-handed meddling in Spanish affairs triggered a ferocious backlash. Madrid rose up against the French garrison, and Murat's troops fought back with brutal force, killing around 200, executing 300 more. When Napoleon deposed Spain's Bourbon monarchy, Murat hoped he'd be made the new king of Spain. But that title went to Napoleon's brother, Joseph. Murat instead received the throne of Naples. If it felt like
where he would ditch later.
Prize,
ditch Napoleon later to go.
For an innkeeper's son, college dropout, and ex-cavalry trooper. Napoleon expected Murat to merely represent his interests in Naples, but Murat had other ideas. He reformed the Neapolitan army, equipping it with splendid new uniforms.
Wow, that's got a tiger pelt on the horse.
And turned a blind eye to smuggling, which undermined Napoleon's economic war against Britain, the so-called Continental System. Relations between Murat and the Emperor became strained. But when Napoleon began planning to invade Russia in 1812, only Murat would do to lead his cavalry. Their differences were put to one side. Murat took command of 4 cavalry corps and became Napoleon's second in command. During the advance into Russia, Murat's cavalry faced a difficult and frustrating task, trying to locate the enemy in a vast landscape. Horses died in their thousands from poor fodder and exhaustion, and they faced a dangerous and wily opponent in Russia's Cossacks. Murat, always riding with the advance guard, was so fearless and conspicuous in his extravagant uniforms that the Cossacks came to admire him, calling out "Hurrah, Murat!" whenever they saw him, and hoped to capture.
Hurrah is for Russians? Wait, Oh, the
Ridiculous
Cossacks?
in his
There's no Russians people in the army like, hoorah! I think U.S. Navy or something does that too.
uniforms that the Cossacks came to admire him, calling out "Ura, Murat" whenever they saw him, and hoped to capture him alive if possible. Murat was among those who tried to persuade Napoleon to halt the advance at Smolensk, but was ignored.
What?
If possible. Murat was among those who tried to persuade Napoleon to halt the advance at Smolensk, but was ignored. At the great clash between the French and Russian armies at Borodino, Murat was at his best, directing a series of attacks on the Russian earthworks, always where the action was hottest, inspiring all with his courage. Murat
and his tiger and leopard
during
pelts.
the retreat from Moscow, though his magnificent cavalry had virtually ceased to exist. One eyewitness noted that throughout the ordeal, he never neglected his appearance. Even at the Berezina he looked splendid, in an open-necked shirt, velvet cloak, a white feather in his cap. When Napoleon left the army to return to Paris, he gave command to Marshal Murat. But
Are they just like sledding over bodies?
Murat, now primarily concerned to Marshal Murat. But Murat, now primarily concerned with hanging on to his kingdom, left the army a month later and returned to Naples, where he opened secret negotiations with the coalition. He offered to join the war against Napoleon if the other powers would let him keep his crown. But he received only a lukewarm.
I just want to get this question out of my head because it's not directly related to this stuff, sort of is. But I know armies tend to recover their dead as much as they can, but with all of the giant battles in Europe, just the Napoleonic Wars, 7 Years' War, and even stuff earlier, World War I, World War II, it's just how many body remains have got to be that weren't able to be recovered, have just got to be scattered just all across Europe and Russia.
Warm response. So in 1813, when Napoleon asked Murat to join him in Germany to fight for their thrones together, he answered the call. Murat had become increasingly difficult to work with, oversensitive about his royal status, prone to tantrums, but in battle,
This guy was a character, huh?
At Dresden, his charge through rain and mud shattered the Austrian left wing and paved the way for victory. But then at Liebert-Volkwitz, he showed his limitations when not under Napoleon's direct command, getting drawn into a major and unnecessary cavalry battle with coalition forces, and twice nearly being captured himself. 2 days later, at the Battle of Leipzig, he led another of history's great cavalry charges, coming close to breaking the enemy's center and even capturing the Allied monarchs. But it was not to be. The Battle of the Nations ended in a disastrous defeat.
Are these just for show? I mean, I can see the helmet, but I'd imagine that's not bulletproof. Obviously not cannon-proof, but maybe bayonet and saber. But maybe it was pretty lightweight.
As Napoleon retreated to the French frontier, Murat informed the emperor that he was leaving for Naples, promising to raise
I'll be right back. Where are you going, Murat? I just gotta go to Naples for a sec. I'll raise French morale along the way. Are you sure? I mean, yeah, I'll see you later, man. It just never goes back.
fresh troops. Murat and Napoleon would never meet again. 3 months later, the King of Naples had cut a deal with the coalition and switched sides.
In Bernadotte in Sweden.
So long as it was possible for me to believe that the Emperor Napoleon was fighting to bring peace and glory to France, I fought loyally at his side, Murat declared. But now I know that the Emperor's sole desire is war.
He dies at 48.
However, Murat's commitment to the Sixth Coalition was distinctly half-hearted. His army marched against Eugene's forces in northern Italy, but had done no actual fighting before news arrived of Napoleon's abdication. Murat then began to suspect what had...
Yeah, we're on our way. Yeah, we're going. Yeah, we're going. Oh, the war's over? Oh, great.
...been obvious to Napoleon at least. The coalition was not suspect what had been obvious to Napoleon at least. The coalition was not going to honor its promise, and Murat would be next to lose his throne. So, in 1815, encouraged by news of Napoleon's return from exile, Murat marched north against the Austrians, proclaiming a war for Italian freedom and independence. Just 7 weeks later, his campaign ended in defeat at the Battle of Tolentino. With the British and Austrians closing in, Murat became a hunted fugitive. He sailed to France, but Napoleon had not forgiven his betrayal and refused to see him. After Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo, he fled to Corsica, gathered a small band of volunteers, and returned to Italy in a hopelessly doomed attempt to start a revolution and reclaim his throne.
How close is that? Sicily, right? How close? Is there a bridge there? How close?
Attempt to start a revolution and reclaim his throne. Chased by a mob. And arrested on the beach, Murat was sentenced to death by the restored Bourbon monarchy of Naples. He met his end with his usual courage, telling the firing squad, "If you wish to spare me, aim at the heart," then gave the order to fire himself.
What is he trying? Oh, damn, that's crazy. That's badass. But what does he mean by, "If you wish to spare me, aim for the heart"? What, his heart is like too strong or something? But that's crazy. He said fire.
Then gave the order to fire himself.
All right, I like this guy.
Murat is rightly remembered as one of the great battlefield cavalry commanders of history. Inspirational, fearless, with brilliant tactical instincts.
I want these paintings all around my room.
But outside of combat, he was, in Napoleon's estimation, a very poor general. He always waged war without maps. Worse,
he just went right in.
Conflict turned against France. He allowed self-interest and vanity to prevail over loyalty to the emperor. As Napoleon's chief of staff...
Make sure you get my butt in the shot. Come on. Is that like his servant over there? Jeez.
Marshal Berthier once told him, "You're only a king by the grace of Napoleon and French blood. It's black ingratitude that's blinding you."
Huh?
Sincere.
Did I miss something there?
As Napoleon's chief and vanity to prevail over loyalty to the emperor. As Napoleon's chief of staff, Marshal Berthier once told him, "You're only a king by the grace of Napoleon." Sincere, Oudinot, Victor, Murat. 17 down, 9 to go. Join us for part 4 when we'll continue the countdown. Coming soon. Thanks again to our
Thank
videos.
you. Thank you, sir. Awesome. There's one more, I believe. I will do that either tonight or tomorrow. Awesome. Awesome video like always. And is it him who is Epic History TV who also has like a Caesar one? Let's check that out right now. Let's see. Wait, hold on.
Basically.
How you guys doing, by the way? You all right? Any of you who, like, 3 of you stuck around this long? Videos, newest. Maybe playlists. Crusade playlist, Marshals, in Espanol there. First voyage around the world, Magellan and Drake. Ooh.
A Simple History, Epic History TV. This is an Epic History TV, Simple History. A Simple History, Epic History TV.
All right, that sounds pretty cool. Alexander the Great, Suez Crisis, First Crusade, American Presidents. Maybe that one. Russia, World War One. Yeah, well, I'll pick out another video soon and finish that next Marshals one. See you guys later.